A few years ago, I was working as a deckhand on an Alaskan fishing boat. From as far back as I can remember, my parents drilled the importance of hard work into me. They'd always say that hard work brought the best rewards, and I'd taken that to heart. That belief was what drove me to Alaskan fishing, where I found plenty of hard work, mixed with a fair share of risk. The stakes were high, but the rewards were even higher. I loved it, and I was determined to work my way up to captain one day. This story takes place during my 5th crabbing season. By then, I was a seasoned hand. I knew the ropes, I was familiar with the waters, and I'd already seen a few deaths up close. I thought I was prepared for anything. I couldn't have been more wrong. Our crew was 15 strong, including me, when we set out. By the time we returned, that number would be cut in half. And as for me, I'd never set foot near the ocean again. I was working on the Seaward Sarah, a vessel well past her prime, but known for her reliability. It passed her safety inspection earlier that year, so I didn't think twice about setting off into the cold, vast waters of the North Pacific. The exhilaration of being back at sea hit me the moment we left port. The fresh salty breeze, endless blue stretching as far as I could see. The excitement was palpable among the crew. First night out, we held our traditional party. Even the captain joined in, laughing and dancing with us. 2 days in, though, something was off. The Seaward Sarah was listing to her starboard side. It wasn't dangerous yet, but it was enough for the captain to consult the ship's engineer. After a quick check, they decided we were good to continue. The captain's plan was to balance her out by loading more crabs on the port side. It sounded reasonable enough, and I didn't question it. I was just a deckhand, out here. The captain's word was law. But as the days passed, I couldn't ignore the list. It grew worse, going from a slight tilt to a noticeable incline that burned my calves every time I braced against the pull towards starboard. The captain's mood shifted. I watched him storm around, shouting into the receiver, his face reddening as he cursed everyone he could think of, the ship manufacturer, the inspectors, even the contractors who'd last worked on her hull. The tension in the crew thickened, and the Seaward Sarah felt more unsettling with each passing day. One night, as we gathered in the dining hall, struggling to keep our plates and glasses from sliding off the table, the captain came in and announced we'd be turning back. Relief washed over me. I'd been longing for the freedom of the ocean, but as the tilt worsened, I started feeling trapped instead. What had once felt like freedom now felt like a cage, and I couldn't wait to get out. As I headed back to the crew quarters, I felt the ship turn. I braced myself against the wall, disoriented by the combination of the sharp turn and the list. I just needed to lie down, to let myself adjust. I don't know if things would have been different if the storm hadn't hit that night. I'll never know because the storm did hit, and it hit hard. 1 minute, the radar showed nothing. The next, we were in the middle of a tempest, waves, and rain slamming against the ship. The Seaward Sarah groaned as her list grew worse. Objects flew, doors crashed open, and I staggered down the hallway, trying to reach the deck. The ship's tilt had gotten so bad that my feet touched the wall, and I realized the wall was practically becoming the floor. Then I heard the call to abandon ship. Disoriented and bruised, I struggled forward, soaked and shaken. I remember feeling a pair of hands grab me, guiding me toward the deck. At some point, I'd managed to get a life vest on, but I don't remember how. All I could think about was the lightning-lit waves outside, towering over us. Thunder drowned out the screams around me, but I saw my crewmates fighting to launch a lifeboat. I stumbled toward them, but before I could get a grip, a wall of ice-cold water threw me into the railing. The next wave pulled me overboard. The pain was blinding. I'd been tossed around like a ragdoll, and the freezing water was like needles stabbing me from all directions. I couldn't tell which way was up, but the life vest managed to haul me back to the surface each time. It felt like an eternity. Wave after wave dragged me under, only for the vest to save me just long enough to catch a breath. I can still feel it sometimes, the unrelenting assault of the waves, and the sharp taste of salt filling my mouth. I was convinced I'd die, either by drowning or by exhaustion. I didn't know which would get me first. And then, suddenly, I felt a tug. For a split second, I thought something monstrous from the depths had grabbed me. "Stop that! I'm trying to pull you in." Greta yanked me into the lifeboat, and I collapsed in a puddle of water and blood. The others were shouting instructions, rowing hard to escape the whirlpool around the sinking ship. I was too weak to do anything but lie there, letting the horror wash over me. As I lay there, I wondered if we'd ever escape. The storm eventually calmed, leaving us adrift in a lifeboat with 7 other crewmates. We found a second lifeboat and paddled toward it, relieved to find that everyone had made it off the Seaward Sarah alive. The captain, in the other raft, shouted, "We sent a distress call. They have our coordinates. Help won't be long." I hoped he was right. We took inventory of our supplies, tied the rafts together, and waited. But then, out on the horizon, we saw a light. It should have brought relief. Instead, it brought only dread. None of us knew why, but there was a weight in the air as we stared at it. The light was just wrong. It was too still, too fixed. It didn't bob with the ocean or sweep the water like a searchlight. Greta whispered, "It's not moving." She'd hit the nail on the head. In the silence that followed, my mind raced. There was no way a rescue vessel had made it here that fast. The light seemed to glow, almost pulsate, but it remained eerily stationary. Then, in a sudden flash, the captain fired a flare into the sky. The light never moved. "Row," he yelled. But none of us moved, paralyzed by some primal fear. "Damn it! Row!" One by one, crewmates shifted to the coward's raft, as the captain called it, leaving only a few who decided to follow him. He cut the lines between us, paddling toward the light. We called out, pleading with them not to go, but it was as if they were in a trance. Minutes later, when their raft should have reached the light, it blinked out, and they were gone. The Coast Guard eventually found us, though they searched long into the night and days after. But the captain's raft never turned up. They called off the search, saying it was impossible to find them in the open sea, but I never believed it. I left the ocean after that. Took up work as a trucker, far away from the water. Greta still goes out there, though she's a captain now. We keep in touch, and sometimes we talk about that night. I know she's heard of more ships vanishing in that same spot, 5 at last count, all without a trace. They call it the Alaska Triangle now. A part of me wants answers, but mostly, I'm just glad to be on solid ground, far from the light. On February 11th, 2024, Captain H.G. Barnes departed Hamilton Point Marina in Maine aboard his fishing vessel, the Wild Rose, accompanied by a crew of 10 seasoned fishermen. Captain Barnes, a highly respected and decorated veteran of the sea, had spent decades navigating the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic. Known for his leadership and the successes of his fishing operations along the East Coast, Captain Barnes was a fixture of the local maritime community. The Wild Rose set out under his command before dawn, yet what began as a routine expedition soon devolved into one of Maine's most disturbing maritime mysteries. When the Wild Rose failed to return by the afternoon as expected, concern quickly spread across the marina. After 24 hours with no sign of the boat, an extensive search and rescue operation was launched. The Coast Guard, along with several local fishing vessels, combed the coastline, extending their search deep into the North Atlantic. As days turned to weeks, the cold February air and turbulent seas hampered efforts, yielding no sign of the vessel or crew. 2 weeks after the search began, authorities reluctantly declared the Wild Rose lost at sea, Captain Barnes and his crew presumed dead. For months, the mystery remained a chilling open wound in the close-knit coastal community. No trace of the Wild Rose was ever found, no distress signal, no debris, nothing. The case lingered in silence, marked only by the sorrow of families left without answers. That silence shattered on July 5, 2024, when an unexpected piece of evidence emerged from the sea itself. A woman walking her dog along the shores of Bar Harbor discovered a bottle among the wreckage on the beach, a pile of splintered wood and twisted metal that seemed to have been scattered by the tide. Inside the bottle, folded carefully, were pages covered in a frantic scrawl. These were the journal entries of Chief Mate Anthony Harrison, recording the last desperate days of the Wild Rose crew. The account is dated February 15, 2024, mere days after the Wild Rose disappeared. In his diary, Harrison details the horrifying journey that began the moment they encountered what he called the ghost ship, an ancient, rusted cargo vessel drifting without a crew or destination. Drawn by curiosity and the need for potential resources, Captain Barnes had decided to board the ship. Despite his decades at sea, he admitted this was the first ghost ship he had ever encountered, and Harrison, his right-hand man, reluctantly followed him. Harrison writes of how regret and dread soon took hold as he, Barnes, and the rest of the crew set foot on the vessel's corroded metal decks. It was a decision that would lead them into a nightmare from which they would never return. The first night aboard, the temperature dropped sharply, with the cold steel of the ghost ship seeping through their bones as they huddled in a cafeteria for shelter. Harrison's account speaks of a biting chill, the oppressive darkness, and the eerie sounds that seemed to echo through the empty corridors, growing louder as the hours dragged on. Soon, the already fragile morale of the crew was shattered when they discovered one of their own, Edison, had vanished, along with their only escape route, the Wild Rose. Realizing Edison had stolen the fishing boat, leaving them stranded, the crew's initial anger turned to desperation. As the hours passed, they discovered they were not alone. Harrison described strange, human-like creatures lurking in the shadows, tracking the crew through the dim corridors, their footsteps echoing eerily. The following morning, Captain Barnes ordered the crew to search the ship for supplies, as well as any remaining means of escape. They split into pairs, with Barnes and Harrison exploring the lower levels of the ship. The corridors were lined with rusted lockers, some of which held remnants of the ship's mysterious past, clothing, broken tools, and, more disturbingly, human remains. Their exploration quickly turned grim as they stumbled upon body after body, skeletons twisted in unnatural poses, dressed in dark uniforms bearing European flags and logos Harrison couldn't decipher. Many of the corpses appeared to have been hiding, their hands frozen in desperate attempts to shield themselves. Others were simply strewn across the floor, as if discarded. The decay was overwhelming. One body had been partially absorbed into the ceiling, and the entire scene was drenched in dried blood, the wall stained with evidence of violent, inexplicable deaths. The encounter took a terrifying turn when they heard what sounded like footsteps and guttural growls echoing in the corridor behind them. Harrison describes a sense of impending doom as the sounds grew closer. Panic set in, but Barnes, despite his age, attempted to remain composed. They hurried back toward the stairs, with Harrison practically dragging Captain Barnes to safety. At the foot of the stairs, a pale hand emerged from the darkness, wielding a crude shiv that sliced through Barnes' leg, incapacitating him. A face soon followed, a human-like figure with sunken yellow eyes, pale skin, and sharp, jagged teeth. In an act of desperation, Harrison shattered their lantern against the creature's face, temporarily blinding it in a burst of flames. He described seeing other shadowy figures lurking behind the creature, just beyond the reach of the light. With Barnes leaning on him, Harrison rushed up the stairs, slammed the door shut, and latched it as the creature's snarls reverberated through the corridor. The impact against the door intensified, as though the beings were trying to break through. When they finally returned to the cafeteria, Barnes collapsed from his wound, and the remaining crew gathered around him. Harrison, in a dazed state of exhaustion and terror, tried to convey the horrors they had just encountered, but words failed him. All that was left was a haunting sense of dread, an understanding that they were trapped on a ship where something unspeakable roamed, and no one was coming to save them. The last entries of Harrison's diary reveal a man losing grip on reality. He recounts the relentless cold, the dwindling supplies, and the sense of impending doom. The ship's walls, he notes, seemed to close in on them, filled with ghostly whispers and scratching sounds, as if the souls of those who died on the vessel lingered, trapped alongside them. He ends his final note with a plea, scrawling in increasingly shaky handwriting, imploring anyone who finds the message to come to their rescue. If anyone reads this, we are still out here, trapped in a living hell. Please, you must find us, he writes in his last desperate appeal. Harrison's message has reignited the search for Captain Barnes and his crew. Authorities are now using all available resources to triangulate the Wild Rose's last known coordinates and the potential location of the ghost ship. Experts in maritime history and cryptography have been called upon to examine Harrison's diary entries, hoping to decode any clues that might reveal the identity and origin of the ghost ship. For the families of Captain Barnes and his crew, the discovery of Harrison's message is both a renewed source of hope and a harrowing testament to the unimaginable horrors their loved ones may have endured. The haunting tale now propels a renewed search effort, as rescuers and maritime experts alike brace themselves to confront whatever dark forces may linger off the cold, unforgiving coast of Maine.